In this video, I'm going to cover 10 things that you need to know when you're choosing your barbershop location. So if you're a barbershop owner looking to open a location, or even if you're a barber looking to work somewhere, I think some of these things in this video can help you out as well. So let's get right into it. These are the 10 things that you need to know before you open up a new location or before you open up your first location, or if you're a barber looking to work at a barbershop. These are things to keep in mind when you're trying to choose where to work. So this is what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to cover understanding your target market, traffic and accessibility, local competition, visibility and branding, cost and lease terms, demographics, zoning regulations, complementary businesses, space requirements, and then finally future growth potential. So let's get right into it. So the first thing, probably the most important thing, especially if you're a barber looking to work at another barbershop, is you have to know who you're targeting. It sounds super simple, but a lot of people don't think about this. And this is actually something that I did when I was in barber school. So when I was in barber school, I started to get an idea of these are the types of clients I like to work with. I tended to clients that had a little bit of money, a little bit of spending power. So I realized that when I go to work for a barbershop in the future, I wanted to work with people that had money. So before I moved to the city that I live in now, I actually started researching the areas of town that had higher income levels, right? Because I want to work with people that have a little bit more spending power. So I want to look at areas of town that have a high income levels. And that actually is a lot easier than you might think. You can just search demographics for your city or for the city that you're moving to. But basically, you can just start to break down. And this is what I did. I searched for the highest income zip codes in Jacksonville, where I am. And I started to look at which zip codes have the highest income, right? And then I only started looking for jobs for a barbershop in those areas. I didn't look outside of that because I knew this is the type of clients that I wanted to work at. So if you're a barber looking for a job, the first thing you need to do is identify who are the types of clients that I want to work with. And then I would recommend you start to look at the demographics for your city and pick barbershops that are in the zip codes that match what you want to work with as far as your client goes and your skill level, right? And then if you're a barbershop owner, it's the same exact thing, except you're looking for your barbershop. These are the kinds of clients that I want to work with. What areas of town are going to match the types of clients we're going after? So if you are trying to run a high-end barbershop where you're charging, I don't know, $100 for a haircut, you probably don't want to be in an area of town where the income level is below average, right? You want to be in the above average, maybe in the high percentile range of income. So when you understand the type of clients that you want to work with, it makes it so much easier when choosing an area of town because you can just eliminate all of these areas of town. I'm not even going to bother looking there. I'm just going to look at this zip code and try to find, let's just narrow it down to this specific zip code. It makes your life so much easier. So that's what I did. It turned out to be a good decision, and I think it'll help you too. So you want to research, first thing, define your ideal client, because if you don't know that, then it's going to make all of this other stuff much, much harder. And you want to research the neighborhoods where your target demographic lives. So look at where do people work? Where do people live? Shopping areas, things like that. And because you want to try to plan like where is the location that is most likely going to keep us busy as a barbershop. And then you also want to think about walk-ins versus appointments, because this is a huge one that I think I didn't think about until recently, right? Because if you're in a mall, for example, high foot traffic, appointments might be harder, right? Because you're getting people that are probably impulse, oh, and let me get a haircut while I'm here. You could probably make appointments work in a mall, but it's probably going to be a little bit more skewing towards a walk-in basis. And for another example, let's think about if you had a barbershop in an airport, for example, right? Appointments probably aren't going to make sense in an airport because people are just going to be getting their haircut in between flights when are on a layover, right? Your retention is also going to be terrible, right? Because these people aren't coming back. But just something to think about. If you want to be an appointment-based shop, then you probably want to be in an area that's not super high foot traffic or only foot traffic. You want to have an area of town where maybe people work nearby or live nearby. If you're just going all in walk-in foot traffic, then just keep in mind that appointments may not work in that scenario. So to summarize this section here, before you choose a barbershop location, you need to know the type of clientele that you're going after. If you don't, then you're gonna waste your time looking at a lot of barbershops or locations that may not be a good fit for what it is that you're trying to build. All right, so the second thing, traffic. So this is something that definitely the more traffic, the better. But what I can say based on experience, the higher the traffic, the more people, the chances are the higher the rent's going to be. So I think that you want to choose a barbershop location that has the highest amount of traffic possible within what makes sense for what you can afford. And we'll get into how to determine what you can afford in a second. But obviously the more traffic the better, but the people that run these malls, these shopping plazas, they know that stuff, right? They know what they got. It's kind of mean, I know what I have, right? So you want to choose the highest traffic area possible. So near malls, near busy streets, transit hubs, so a lot of people coming and going, right? An airport would be an example of that, but like I said, you may not have, it may be a walk-in basis, right? But keep in mind, places that have high traffic are more valuable in terms of real estate, so it is going to be more expensive to be there. Now, if you can afford that based on your calculations on what you think you can afford rent-wise, then go for it. But just keep in mind that the better the area, the better the plaza, the better the situation, the more it's going to cost in terms of rent. And rent is usually broken up by per square foot. So it's one thing to have a big location, but also the rate, what they charge per square foot, is going to be higher if that location is in a good area and it's a good location and all the businesses in that plaza are staying busy. It's going to be more expensive to be there. So why typically with big malls and stuff, these are usually big companies that can afford to be there, right? Because they know we can make this up profit-wise, right? And even then, sometimes the big companies go out of business. So just be careful when choosing high foot traffic areas. It's definitely an ideal scenario, but if you go in a mall or a busy area, it's going to probably be more expensive than your neighborhood shopping plaza down the street that's a little bit more quiet. Parking is something that I think a lot of barbers don't think about, because parking can be a deal breaker for clients. We have clients come all the time to us that stopped going to their last barber just because they hated the parking situation. It doesn't take much for people to stop coming to you as a barber, and something as little as lack of parking could be enough for people to be like, I think I'm going to start looking for another barbershop. So think about that when you're planning your location, or if you're looking for a place to work. How hard is it to park there? Because if it's hard to park there as a barber working there, imagine how hard it's going to be for a client. So you want to have availability to parking. The more parking, the better. And that's kind of counterintuitive, because if you're also looking for a high foot traffic place, they might take up all the parking, right? So you might have to decide what's something in the middle, right? You want to be in a high foot traffic area, but near busy businesses and stuff like that. But if they're really busy businesses like a Starbucks or something, they might take up all your parking. So keep that in mind. The parking can be a deal breaker for clients. So you want to make sure. I would recommend, and this is what I did, I literally sat outside of the barbershops that I was considering working at. Before I even walked in and met the owner, I sat there and watched. I just watched what the people going in and out. I watched the outside of the building. And it wasn't for long. It was only maybe for like an hour or so. But that gave me an idea of how busy this area is. What is the parking situation? How many people are coming and going? What are the barbers doing when they think nobody's watching? Right? So you can do the same thing too. If you're looking to choose a specific barbershop to work at, or a specific building to put your barbershop, I would recommend just go park there, sit there for an hour, and just see what's going on, right? If it's difficult to park there, it's going to be difficult to get your clients to park there. They might love you as a barber, but people got to be able to get in there. And ease of access is one of those things too. Like, do they have to do 3 U-turns to go to your barbershop and then park on some side road and dodge traffic crossing the street? If that's the case, going to be harder to build that location, to build your business there, as opposed to somebody where they can just park right in there and then get out and go inside the shop. Barbers don't think about this. Like, you just think about rent, but it's these other things too. It might be worth it to pay a little bit more money rent wise if it means that the parking is better for the clients, because parking can be a deal breaker and they will stop coming to you if parking is difficult enough. And then if you're shooting for a target market that is dependent on public transportation to get to you, then you want to keep that in mind as well. Because if they can't get to you, public transportation wise, parking wise, going to be difficult to build a business there. So to summarize this section, you want to choose a barbershop that has the highest foot traffic area that you can afford. But keep in mind, you have to take into account the parking. If the parking is terrible, if the ease of access is terrible, if they have to turn in there and dodge traffic, run across the street, walk up a flight of stairs, it's going to be harder. You can make it work. There definitely are barbershops that are in terrible areas that have terrible parking that still find a way to stay busy, but the odds are against you. You're just making it a little bit harder. And if you're a brand new barbershop, or if you're a brand new barber just getting started in a shop, you want to make it easy on clients, because it's already hard enough building a business. So let's not make it even harder by making our clients run across the street to go get their hair cut. So next thing we're going to cover, local competition. So I think this is something that I probably have some different views on this, but I used to think that if there's a lot of barbershops in one area, that you might want to avoid that. But I actually have come to believe that if you see a lot of barbershops in a certain area of town, that could actually be a good thing, because that could mean that there's a lot of clients there. That means that there's enough clients in that area to support all of those barbershops. And there's no way you as a single barbershop, if you're in a relatively big city, can handle every single guy that lives in your city. So you might want to even think about, if there's a lot of barbershops in this particular area, maybe I should consider going there too, right? Because that means there's enough business to go around. All of these barbershops are staying busy. All of these salons are staying busy. That might mean, well, maybe it makes sense to be here too, right? And then, so don't use that as a disqualification criteria. I wouldn't open up a barbershop in the same plaza as another barbershop. People have done that. I've seen that. But I would just say, if there's barbershops nearby, that might be actually a good sign, which means that especially if it's a barbershop that's similar to yours, similar demographic, similar way of running a business, if there's similar barbershops to yours in that area, that could actually be a good thing, because that means you can get some of those clients too, and they've already done the work to test that this makes sense, especially if they've been there for a few years. Don't go off brand new barbershops that are just opening, because barbershops come and go. I see barbershops open up, beautiful shops, brand new, they're closed 6 months later, right? So only go off of businesses that have been established, that have been there for a few years. And then if there's a lot of them in that area, that could mean that maybe it makes sense for you to put a barbershop there too. Or you work there as a barber because there's enough clients in this area to keep all of us busy, right? And then you want to research their pricing and their style, right? Because if they're similar in pricing to what you want to target, if the style, the way they run the shop, the way the shop looks, and the client base that goes there is similar to what you want to do, then that's a good sign. I think that means that they've already proven that this type of barbershop makes sense in this area. Again, I wouldn't open in the same barbershop in the same plaza as them, but it's close by. That could be a good thing for you. So you can position your shop to fill the gap, right? So research. You can even go on the other barbershop's website. This is actually kind of a hack that I learned. You can go on other barbershops' website and just read all their negative reviews and look for what are they not doing, right? What are clients unhappy with? And then you can start to think about planning that for your barbershop to fill that need, right? So if a lot of people are complaining about wait times in a barbershop, maybe that means you will be successful as a barbershop owner if you're the first person to go in that market offering appointments, right? Or vice versa, right? Maybe that everybody hates booking appointments online. You could be the first one in that area that says, well, I'm going to be the one that does walk-ins only, right? You can use free resources like Google to look at the reviews for the barbershops around you, read all the negative ones and look for gaps in the market. Look for what are they not doing so that I can fix that problem, right? I can offer something unique. So if none of them are offering color, maybe you want to offer color. That's going to separate you from the competition. So I think looking at the competition when choosing a barbershop is very, very smart. Reading the reviews, and if a lot of barbershops are in one area, that could actually be a good sign. That could mean there's enough clients in this area to keep all these barbershops busy. Maybe I can be busy too. So the next thing, visibility and branding. So you want to look for locations that have strong street visibility, right? Or signage opportunities, or both, right? Because we're off our main location, our oldest one is our South Side location, House of Shaves Barbershop, South Side. And it's off of one of the busiest streets in our entire city. I got really lucky. I don't know how I got it, but you can actually get clients for free if you pick your barbershop location smart, right? If you can see the barbershop from the road, you're going to get clients for free. It's more rare nowadays to get a client that just says they saw us driving by. But if there's 10,000 cars going across that road every single day, that's basically free marketing for you. And that's why usually locations that have good street visibility are more expensive in terms of rent, because the landlords, the people that run this building know that we have good visibility. The chances of you as a business staying busy are way higher. So look for a location if you can that's off of a street that is easy to see driving by, right? Because it's also going to be, if somebody does decide to book an appointment with you online and see you for the first time, it's going to be easier for them to find you if you're easy to see from the street. We have two locations. Our first one, Southside, is off of a busy road, Southside Boulevard. Super easy to find from the road. Our other one, Riverside, is in an office building. That one is way more confusing, way harder to find. So this is why I'm making this video, because this is stuff I wish I knew before I opened my barbershop. But our second location, the parking is a little bit tougher because I got to park in a garage, take an elevator, and we're inside of an office building. So a lot of people, at least this is something I've learned, a lot of people are looking for a shopping plaza when they're looking for a barbershop. So if you're not in a shopping plaza, it may be a little bit more difficult to find. Even though our barbershop on Riverside is actually way closer to the street than our Southside one is, it just doesn't look like there would be a barbershop in there. And if you want to look it up on Google, it's House of Shaves Barbershop on Riverside Avenue in Jacksonville. And you can see it's just this big office building. And it's not obvious that there would be a barbershop in there, even though we have a sign and everything. We have window decals, all that. It's just, the better you can position yourself in terms of visibility, the better. Signage, something that I definitely ignored for way too long, but it doesn't cost hardly anything to get a couple signs out. I don't think you need to go crazy with, I've talked to some barbershop owners that were looking to spend 6, 7, 8, 10 grand on a sign. And I don't know that it's worth it. Right? Your sign just needs to say barbershop, right? In all bigger letters as you can get. Maybe you can have it light up, maybe not. I don't know that lighting it up is going to make that big of a difference, but it just needs to say barbershop. It doesn't even have to have your name on it, right? Unless your name is like super unique. But in our signage, barbershop are the biggest words on there, right? And then it says House of Shaves in like little tiny letters above it, but it's barbershop is like, that's the main thing you want people to see. It's a more universally recognized term. So you don't need to go crazy with a sign. I think there's other ways that you can draw eyes to your shop. So definitely get a flag. If you got to check with your local laws and stuff like that, but definitely get a flag. Definitely get those cheap lawn signs. They're going to get blown away by the wind. They're going to get stolen. They're going to get thrown away by the city. So make sure that they're not going to fine you for stuff like this, but all this old school stuff in terms of signage still works, in my opinion. Get a little A-frame sign to sit on the sidewalk if you have a sidewalk in front of your shop. All these things help, right? But you want to make sure that you're in an area, you're off of a street where people are actually going to see that, or if they're walking by, they're going to see that. If you're not, then none of those things are going to help you. So another thing is corner locations work really, really well. That's why usually the most valuable pieces of real estate are on a corner, right? That's why every Walgreens and CVS and every restaurant you can think of, gas station, they're all on these corners because it's gonna your visibility is insane from a corner. You get 2 streets, sometimes 4 if you're at an intersection, right? So corner spaces with large windows, huge advantage to have a barbershop in there. And of course, think about how that location aligns with your image, because our original location, we were in this plaza that was in an area of town that wasn't that great. And I knew that going in, but I was like, we could always move. And we did, right? And the reason I wanted to move is because it didn't align with the type of shop that I was trying to build. Like I said, we were trying to go with a more high end, more luxury. That's the direction we were going in. But then I realized we're not really in the right area for that, because we were living next to low income housing. We were literally right next to a corner store, right? So it was great to get started, but I knew that in order to get to where I wanted to be brand wise, we were going to have to move, and we ended up moving the shop. But I don't want you guys to have to go through that. So I think it's better. It's expensive to move. It costs us like 40, 50 grand because we had to build out the new space, get new equipment, and we couldn't take everything with us, right? So it's really expensive to move. That's why it's just, if you want to save 40, 50 grand, choose the right location to begin with, right? So to summarize this section, where the barbershop on the street can actually make a big difference. Choose a location when you're choosing a barbershop that's easy to find, easy to get to, and that has the most amount of eyeballs possible. The next thing we're going to talk about is lease costs and lease terms. So this is something that not a lot of people think about, right? But you want to calculate the rent to revenue ratio, and the rent should fall ideally somewhere between 6 to 10% of your revenue. It should not be more than that. So it depends on your business model and the ones that you're going after. So for commission, hourly based, this is a lot easier, right? It's just as long as you are keeping it within this range as low as possible, really, you should be fine. Booth rent is going to be a little bit harder to stay in this range because your revenue is what you get from the other barbers. But general practice, you want to keep your rent between 6 to 10% of your revenue. So if your revenue is 10 grand a month and your rent is $1,000 a month, then that would be 10%, right? So that would be okay. It's kind of on the high end of the spectrum, but you can always raise your revenue, especially if you're hourly or commission. If you're booth rent, it's going to be a little bit harder to do things like this. So keep that in mind when choosing how much can I afford rent-wise. It should fall, the rent for the barbershop should fall somewhere between 6 to 10% of your total revenue. If you're booth rent, your revenue is what you get from the barbers. If you're commission or hourly, it's the revenue for the shop. And the lower the percentage that's going to rent, the better. But if you're hourly or commission, then your biggest cost is not going to be rent. I can tell you that right now. It's going to be payroll. So the lease terms is something that you're going to want some help with. When you're looking for a new barbershop location, you want to get help. That's probably, if you take one thing away from this video, is get some help, because a good commercial real estate broker can help you with these things. They're going to know these things. They're going to know what areas of town are growing. They're going to know what areas of town have the best demographics based on what you're shooting for. And they can help you actually negotiate the lease. You can also, like we did, you can get an attorney to help you with this stuff. And yes, it's going to cost you money, but think about what it can save you in terms of, you're going to be here for, most places don't do less than 3 years as far as lease terms. Some places, actually, that's on the low end. I think the most common that I've seen is 5 years. So if you're going to be committing to this place for the next 5 years, I think it makes sense to spend a little bit of money right now to make sure that that lease is in your favor, right? So, and if you're in a high demand plaza, or if you're just with buying a house, how the timing of the market matters a lot. If you're in a high demand plaza and the market is hot, these spaces are going, you're going to have less negotiating power. So keep that in mind. But I think using a commercial real estate broker, the last time I checked, it was free too. Usually the landlord pays the commission for that real estate broker that you use. So it might not even cost you anything to use a real estate broker. And if you can get a real estate or somebody that does commercial law, like a lawyer, and they can look over the lease terms for you. You might even be able to use ChatGPT nowadays and just upload the lease and be like, help me negotiate this. But at the very least, get a commercial real estate agent because it might not even cost you anything. So consider the upfront cost too. This is huge, right? So I think that if you want to build a barbershop for the cheapest way possible, then look for a barbershop that used to be a barbershop or used to be a salon. Because when you're building out a barbershop, the most expensive things are electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, right? So if it used to be a barbershop or a salon already, the last person probably already did all of the electrical, all the plumbing, and it's almost like move-in ready. Whereas if you are moving into a space that it is an empty shell, there's nothing in there was never any business in there, or it was a completely different business like a restaurant, the build out is going to cost way more. So keep that in mind. And these contractors, just like with the rent, it's usually based off of per square foot. What are you asking me to do and how much are we doing here, right? And the more square footage you're doing, the more it's going to be in terms of the build out. The deposits, it's going to really range widely on the landlord. But if you are a brand new business, just getting started, they're probably going to ask for more in terms of deposit. They're definitely going to run your credit. They might ask you to provide some bank statements, right, to prove that you can afford this. They're going to ask for collateral. They're going to probably ask you to do what's called where you basically, it's a promissory. If I fail, you can take everything I own. I had to sign that twice because I have 2 locations. So if you're a brand new business and you don't have a lot of track record, you're going to have less negotiating power with this stuff. And you're probably going to have to put a bigger deposit down. If you're moving into a space that didn't used to be a barbershop or a salon, it's going to cost you more money in terms of the build out, everything, right? And then factor in utilities too. Sometimes the utilities are included when it comes to the rent, like our second location, the electricity, water, everything's included, but you pay for it with the common area maintenance that comes with almost every commercial space that you can think of. There's the rent, what you just pay to the landlord, and the chances are there's going to be common area maintenance on top of that, which is basically what you're contributing to help maintain the space, right? So it might not be a direct cost in terms of utilities, but you are going to pay for it one way or the other, right? So to summarize this location, the rent for your barbershop should fall somewhere between 6 to 10% of your revenue. If you're a brand new barbershop, it's going to be harder to negotiate with that landlord, especially if it's a high demand plaza and the market is hot and these spaces are not staying on the market for very long. And it's probably going to cost you more money than you think to build this place out. So the best case scenario is to find a barbershop location that used to be a barbershop or a salon already because they've done a lot of the electrical and plumbing for you. But then I would also ask, what happened to that barbershop, right? So something to keep in mind. So the next thing we're going to talk about demographics and population trends. So this is huge. And I think this is one of the reasons why I've been able to build a barbershop it's not like a new city. It's like Jacksonville is growing fast. It's one of the fastest growing cities in Florida. And I think that's actually been one of the things that I just accidentally stumbled on. So that's been one of the things, because if you think about it, I think it's really difficult to build a barbershop because it takes a lot to convince a guy to stop going to where he's going and to start coming to you instead. So if you can position your barbershop in an area of town that is growing, you're going to have less of a challenge, I think. And that's one of the things that's helped us grow pretty consistently over the years, is that the city is growing. So it's not just that we're trying to get clients that are already going to other barbers, but there are people moving into town that need a new barber, right? So if you're in an area of town where a lot of people are moving to, that's going to be to your advantage as a barbershop owner. Huge advantage, I think, because it's way easier to convince somebody who is new to town to come see you than somebody who's been in town that's been going to the same guy for 20 years or whatever. So look for an area of town that is, or a city, if you're looking at multiple cities, look for the city that's growing the fastest. You want to avoid areas that are declining, where businesses are shutting down, businesses are moving out, apartment complexes are shutting down. You want to look for areas of town where there's things growing, there's construction happening, There is new businesses opening all the time. There's apartment complexes and housing developments popping up everywhere. That's where you want to be as a barbershop. That's what I did when I was looking for my barbershop. I was looking for which areas have the highest population density because it's such a risky thing to open a barbershop. A lot of people don't understand, I think, the kind of risk that they're taking on when they open a barbershop. I definitely didn't. So if you're going to open a barbershop, try to put it in the busiest area of town that you can because you only need a few of those people to come to you. The higher the population density, the better the odds are for you, right? So look for areas of town where neighborhoods that are increasing, there's commercial development happening, there's new homes being built. Look for things like that. Avoid areas where there's declining anything, really, but especially businesses moving out. There's a lot of empty shopping plazas. You want to avoid those areas. So in short, the summary for this section is look for an area of town for your barbershop where you're seeing population growth. If that area is not growing, there's businesses shutting down, there's not new apartments or housing popping up, then you might want to avoid that area because opening a barbershop is so risky. You want to put it in the area of town that's going to give it the best chance for success. So choose an area of town or a city where it's ideally growing fast because then you can ride that wave. The next thing, zoning and regulations. This one's pretty short and simple. Just make sure where the area of town that you're thinking about putting your barbershop is zoned for that type of business. And it's pretty easy to find this information out. If you're working with a commercial real estate agent, they can easily find this stuff out for you. But for an example of this, one of the ideas that I had was, I wonder if we could put a barbershop, because my barbershop's called House of Shaves. And I thought, what if we were literally in a house, right? But when I looked at the location and the zoning requirements and stuff, I realized, oh, that's definitely illegal. You have to be, well, if the house is zoned for commercial, then that's different. But keep that in mind when you're looking for a barbershop location. It has to be zoned for a barbershop. If not, then you're operating illegally. So just check for the zoning for that area. Check the local health and safety regulations. See if there's any restrictions or special permits required. You're going to need permits if you're touching the electrical, if you're touching the plumbing, HVAC, if you're moving walls, you're going to need a permit for that stuff. And then it has to go to the city. The city has to approve it, or they're going to say, what's this? Change that. And this is why I think you want a general contractor if you're going to build out a barbershop, because they can handle all this stuff for you. They're the ones that manage the electrical guys, the plumbing guys. You just pay the general contractor. They pull the permits. They work with you to design it. You can use an architect. You might need an architect depending on what you're planning on doing. But then once all the permits and everything go through, then construction can start. But if you have to do something that requires a permit, it's going to take, I think, minimum of 6 to 12 months for when you start the process to now your business is ready to open. So before committing to a barbershop location, just ensure that the location is zoned for commercial use. Don't open up in your garage and think that you can do this stuff legally. This if you want a legitimate business, it's gonna have to do it the legal way, right? This is a big one right here. So complementary businesses. You want to, I think, position. This is one of the things I wish I knew. Position your barbershop so that it's near businesses that attract your type of clientele. So, for example, you being near a gym or a cafe or clothing stores that, in our case, appeal to men, really good idea as a barbershop owner. But really just any business in general, like we're near Publixes and stuff like that. You want to be near an area of near businesses that are essentially going to do marketing for you indirectly, right? Because people are going to be going to those businesses, and every time they go there, they're going to see yours. So it's the same thing almost if you have a barbershop that's off of a busy street. When you're near local businesses that are busy, then that's free marketing for you as a barbershop owner. And if you're a barber looking for a place to work, you want to pick a barbershop, I think, that is near other businesses that are busy. Right? Just keep in mind the parking situation like we talked about earlier. If they're taking up all the parking, it's going to frustrate your clients. So there's a balance there. But one of the things I thought was so smart is I actually heard that some businesses like Starbucks and Chick-fil-A, a lot of these big chains, they won't actually even consider opening a location unless there's another type of business ready. in that area. So I think that I even heard a salon owner say this one time on a podcast. She won't even open a location unless there's a Starbucks within like a mile of that area, because she knows that Starbucks has done their research and that they've done the demographic study or whatever, and that her target market is this basically the same type of people that go to Starbucks. So you can do the same thing as a barbershop owner. You can say, I know that that gym attracts a lot of people that like to come, that are the same type of people that come to my shop. So if there's not a gym of this type in this area, or a restaurant of this type, or a coffee shop of this type in that area, then I'm not even going to consider opening a location in that area. And I think that what I saw the salon owner do that was really smart is she actually wrote it into her lease that if that Starbucks moves out, that we get to move out too. So that's how important she thought it was to have that business so close by, is because if that Starbucks leaves, then that could mean that maybe this area is declining and maybe I need to consider leaving too. Because if a Starbucks can't stay busy, then what makes you think you as a barbershop owner are going to be able to stay busy? So you can also, having those businesses nearby, you can look for cross promotion opportunities. You're like, you go in there and you say, hey, I leave a stack of my flyers here and I can take a stack of yours, leave them in my shop. Especially if it's local businesses, they're going to be more willing to do this stuff like that. Bigger companies, they're going to be, I don't really need you, right? But you can still try. But having local other businesses that are busy near you is going to definitely help. Basically act as free marketing for your barbershop. So to summarize this section, look for businesses that complement yours, that attract the same type of clients as yours. There's even some businesses that won't even move into an area unless there's other businesses that target similar clients like that already in that area. So you can use the same strategy. Maybe you don't have the money to do the demographic studies of your area to decide whether it's worth doing a barbershop in that location. But if there's a Starbucks there, or if there's a Target there, then maybe that makes sense for you to put a barbershop there too. Especially like we did earlier with these if there's other barbershops in that area that serve a similar type of clientele to yours, in a way that's almost proving that maybe it makes sense for you to put a barbershop there too, because these barbershops are making it, so maybe you can do it too. So the next thing is the space requirements. This is a huge mistake that I see a lot of barbershop owners make, but I see a lot of barbershop owners open shops that are beautiful, but they're way too big. They might have this 4,000 square foot space and they have 8 chairs in there. I'm like, oh my God, your rent must be ridiculous, because when you are choosing a barbershop, you're paying for every square foot that you're using. Whether you're making money off of it or not, you're actually paying for every square foot. So I think you want to have the minimum number of square foot that you need to fit the number of stations that you want. So in our case, we have 8 stations in both of our shops. And in both of our shops are less than 1,000 square foot total. So it also depends on your state, because I know like in Florida, for example, there needs to be a minimum square footage for each barber. I think it's really low, something like 50, 60 square feet. I think our shops, the minimum is like 100. Basically, each barber has somewhere between 60 and 100 square feet for each station. That's kind of how we planned it. So you want to figure out what's the minimum square footage that's legal for your state, if they have one. And then that's how you can back your way out to, this is how much square footage I need. Don't go any bigger than what you need. The waiting room does not need to be massive. I see some barbershops that have this massive waiting room, but you don't make money off of a waiting room. You don't make money off of a break room. You don't make money off of a bathroom. So what you should dedicate most of your space to is the stations, because that's the only thing actually making you money as a barbershop owner. Everything else, make it as small as possible. And then you want to have the smallest space, square footage wise, possible, where you can fit the number of stations based on your goal, right? And you can actually have more than the number of barbers working out of those stations. You can actually start splitting stations. So at one point at our Southside location, we had 12 barbers working out of 8 stations. So we had 4 people that were sharing. We got lockers to make it easy on them, but they would basically have to take their tools out at the end of their shift and then put them in the locker, and the next barber would come in and they would work out of that same station. And we tried to make it easy. The schedule was basically Wednesday through Saturday, and then the next barber came in and worked Sunday through Wednesday, and Wednesday was a half day. So you can do stuff like that. So you don't have to have these massive amount of stations to have all these barbers. They can share if you get to that point, and I hope you do, where you need more help than what the original plan was. You can split stations, right? So you don't need to have a massive amount of stations. Just look at what the biggest companies in our industry do. Sport Clips, Great Clips, all these chain barbershops. You're not going to find too many of them that have more than 6, 8, 10 stations, because they know this stuff, right? They know that you don't need that many stations. You can have more barbers working than the number of stations that you have. So don't make the mistake of getting some massive square footage for your barbershop, because chances are, especially if you're a new business, you're not going to start out busy day one. You're probably not going to start out with a full staff. So start with just the minimum number. And another mistake that I made and that I see a lot of people make is that they open a barbershop and they spend all this money on chairs and stations, and it's like, but then they open the shop and they have 2 barbers working. So I think you build it as you go, right? So start with 2, maybe 3 stations, right? And let's say the goal is to get to 8. You can always add those other stations later. You don't need them on day one. The shop doesn't look as nice, but having money in the bank account is nicer than making the shop look nice. One of the things I see a lot of new barbershop owners, the mistake that they're making is they're just investing so much money into making their space look beautiful, and then they go out of business 6 months later, and now you're just building that barbershop for the next person to take over. So don't blow all your money on the build out when you're building a barbershop. Build it as you go. Start with the minimum number of stations that you need to get started on day one, and then build on that as you go. But don't get this massive space and then fill it all with chairs and barbers, because you probably don't need all that on day one. So please listen to that. Don't make the same mistake that I made, and that I see a lot of other barbershop owners make. Build it as you go. You don't need all this stuff on day one. You don't need a massive space. 1,000 square foot, fine, right? You can always move later. You can always expand into the space next to you if it's available. But don't start with some huge space, because you're just going to have huge overhead from day one. Don't blow all your money on building this beautiful shop just to go out of business 6 months later. Get the minimum space that you need. Ideally, like we talked about earlier, make sure that if it's a space that used to be a barbershop or a salon, that's best case scenario, because it's basically move-in ready. You might not even have to pull any permits. You can just move your stuff in and get ready to go. And then, so to summarize this, look for a location that's big enough where you can fit the number of stations that you want. You don't always have to add more stations to add more barbers. You can split stations. Like I said, we had 12 barbers working out of 8 stations. And that's with the total space for our shop is less than 1,000 square feet. So you don't need a huge space to actually generate enough revenue to make your business profitable to where you want it. Don't get a bigger space than what you need, because you're paying for every square foot. Make the waiting area as small as possible. Make the break room as small as possible. Make the bathroom as small as possible. You have to keep in mind the ADA, the American Disability Act. They have to be able to get through the shop with a wheelchair. They have to be able to get into the bathroom with a wheelchair. But you want to make it as small as possible. Barely compliant is my strategy, right? Because you're paying for every square foot. So make as much of that shop dedicated to the stuff that makes you money when you're building out a barbershop. All right, and the last thing, future growth potential. Because if you do this right, and you follow all the advice that's on my channel, your barbershop is going to grow. So that's when the fun part happens, right? You can choose a location that allows you to scale up over time. So if the space opens up next to you, you can maybe talk to the landlord about what I need to do to take over that space. You can choose an area of town that maybe on a different side of town that is for our second location, right? But the idea is you don't want to have to move the barbershop, ideally, right? Unless the rent's gotten ridiculous or that area is declining. I think it's going to take a lot for us to move. If we have that opportunity, it would take a lot. The space would have to be way cheaper, basically move-in ready, and in an area that was growing even faster than where we're at now. And so that's going to be really tough. That would basically be the only situation where I would even consider moving. So choose an area of town or location that the business can grow and it can grow with that area and has the potential to attract new clients over time. So that means that there's construction happening, there's new businesses moving in, there is housing being built, houses, condos, townhomes, apartment complexes. If you see those things happening in that area, that's a good sign, because those people are not investing millions and millions of dollars building these projects without doing research first. So you can piggyback on that like earlier. If you see a lot of apartments and things being built in your area, as long as they're the type of apartments that have your ideal clientele, that's a good sign. Maybe that means you should consider moving in that area as well, because all those apartments, all those businesses are going to bring new people, especially if it's offices, right? But I'm glad I remembered this, because this is something that I should have covered earlier. But this is a huge mistake. I think it was a mistake that I made. Don't choose a location based off of offices because as I learned during COVID, as we all learned really, when people aren't allowed to go to work anymore and all in your location is built around offices, you're going to feel that and it's going to hurt a lot. And offices can move, right? So they might decide to just move that office building and now there goes all of your clients. So if you're going to choose a barbershop, I would strongly recommend you lean more towards residential areas. The population density for residential is really strong there because people have to live somewhere. But if you're choosing a location based off an office building, that office can move. Or then you might have another pandemic in the future and it gets shut down again. All your clients are gone now. I learned that lesson the hard way because I opened my second location during COVID. And it took about 3 years before people started coming back to work. And now the offices started filling up again. But lesson learned, I will probably never open another barbershop that is dependent on traffic coming from offices again. Because offices can move. Pick a barbershop, ideally, where people live near there. Because people are going to have to live somewhere. And if you choose a barbershop based on office buildings and hoping that people come from work, that could work, but just keep in mind, offices can move. Stuff happens, people stop going to work, and sometimes the traffic on the weekends is not nearly as busy if you're in an office-heavy area than if you're in a residential area. So keep that in mind. If you want to stay busy all week long, which is something that we shoot for, consider an area of town that has more residential than commercial. If you have a mixed area, then that's best case scenario, because then you're getting traffic from the office and then you're getting traffic from the residential. That's best case scenario. But I wouldn't go in an area of town that is very office dependent. There's no residential at all, because you might be setting yourself up for failure there. We barely made it. Thankfully, COVID ended and people are back in the office. But lesson learned on my end, I will probably not choose a barbershop that meets that criteria again. In summary, look for an area of town that is growing, construction is happening, new businesses are moving in, but don't put a barbershop that is dependent on an office building, because that office could move and all of a sudden, there goes all your clients. So choose an area of town that is a little bit more residential leaning, or an area of town that's mixed that has offices and residential. But if you go into downtown and it's all offices, well, those offices could move, they could shut down, and your weekend traffic might suck if it's all based on people coming from work. So keep that in mind when you're choosing a location. So these are the 10 things I think that every barbershop owner needs to know before they open a barbershop. You need to consider these things. If you're a barber looking for a job at a barbershop, you need to understand these things too, because it's going to help make choosing a barbershop to work at much easier. You probably don't need to know half things on this list if you're just a barber, but you definitely need to know your ideal client. You can choose the barbershop based on all these other things that we talked about. But if you're a barbershop owner that's looking to open a barbershop, keep these things in mind, get help, and just do your research, because you're going to be there for 3-5 years. So don't rush into this. Don't get a space that's too big, and just try to put yourself in the best position possible when opening a barbershop, because opening a business is so risky. I don't want to see you guys fail. So these are the things that I wish I knew when I was getting started. If you want to work with me, I have a barbershop owner community. It's called the Barbershop Owner Mastermind. I'll put the link in the description below. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in the next one.